Hello, everybody, and welcome into another season preview show here at the Hockey Writers. This is our regular season preview. We did our playoff previews before, but now we're starting the regular season. So we're starting with the New Jersey Devils, and we got Kristy Flannery here, and she covers the Devils at the Hockey Writers here. She's credentialed with the team, so why not bring her on the show? And I'm the host, obviously, and then we got Kyle as a co-host normally on the Hockey Writers podcast. Kristy, thanks for coming on. How's it going?
I am so nervous. I have 3 pages of notes. 3 pages. This is going to be something else.
This is your summer exam to see how well you're going into the new season. So, welcome to the show.
Yeah, right. So I mean, we're kicking off our, like, we've kind of teased throughout the Hockey Writers podcast over the last couple weeks, teasing on the audio side. This is our first back on YouTube, but we're going to be doing our regular season previews now, so it's exciting. We're about a month-ish away from the regular season starting. October 11th, I believe, is the first set of games. So let's get started here, Kristy. Let's start with the forwards. The Devils obviously didn't make the playoffs last year. Got a really good draft pick, second overall pick. We'll talk about him in a second, but let's start with the forwards and starting with the new additions. They added a couple guys. Biggest ones, Ondrej Palat, and then made a trade, trading Pavel Zacha to get Erik Haula. Let's start with that. What are your expectations for Ondrej Palat, and specifically because he's the bigger of the two names? But speak to how you think they're going to do on the Devils this year.
So I think for Palat, the real value that comes with him is his experience, right? This team hasn't had playoff experience. They're extremely young. And now you're bringing in this guy who's been in 3 consecutive Stanley Cup finals. He won 2 Stanley Cups. Like, he knows what it's like. And he was also, if we can go back, on that Tampa team that was swept by Columbus in the first round. So he knows what it's like to have that embarrassing elimination and then come back and swing, you're like a hit and home run. So I think for him, it's just, he brings so much, not only on the ice, but off the ice, that I think is so important for this team. And Jesper Bratt talked about how a lot of times they were like a team that was scared to play with the lead, which is why a lot of times, they would go and start third period, have the advantage, and end up losing. And I think that's where Palat comes in. He's that voice that can really settle this team down and get them on the right track. So I think that listen, it's a lot of term for his age. I get it. I understand why people are upset about it. But I think what he brings is something that the team does not have and the team desperately needs. So I'm expecting a lot from him. He's going to be a great winger for either Hughes or Hischier. And as far as Erik Haula, which I'm so excited about, I've been following his career for so long. So excited he's finally on New Jersey. He's going to help bolster the bottom 6, which the team desperately needs, because we saw last season when the players were injured, our bottom 6 couldn't hang. And it was not a knock to them. It was just they didn't have the right pieces. And I think Haula, having the experience, once again, being a veteran, he's going to come in and really help solidify that bottom 6, which is something that personally I think the team needs.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Both are very experienced, wingers that are going to help out and bring that extra energy, extra level to the team that's been kind of lacking there. But that kind of leads me into my next question, which is, do you think Haula will adequately replace what Zacha brought? I mean, you're talking about Zacha, who was supposed to be a top 6 forward, and now you're bringing in Haula, who's definitely a bottom 6 forward. So can he be an adequate replacement, or is that not something that is expected of him this season?
I think he's bringing something different. I think, and it's not a knock to Zacha. I know there was that dark cloud that really followed him throughout his time in New Jersey, but at the same time, it's not the player's fault. They don't pick where they're going to be selected in the draft, right? It's not his fault. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of times last season, you saw him a little lost. I mean, he was put all throughout the lineup, again, because of injuries, whether it was, the coach's decision, whatever it might be. And I don't know if he was necessarily a role player like Erik Haula is a role player. I look at Erik Erik Haula as a really good replacement. Like, I think like Blake Coleman was that like third line guy, really gritty, played that physical game, and you knew what to expect from him. And I kind of see Haula falling into that category more than Zacha is trying to find his way. I think Zacha's going to do extremely well in Boston. But I think it's going to be different. I think you can't compare the two. I think they're two different players.
That's fair.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I mean, the thing is they're two different players. I mean, you're looking at Hall as a veteran too. He's a lot older.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with you. I think he's going to bring a great addition to the bottom six because he can win faceoffs too, and he's very versatile. So he's going to end up being really good, I think, for the Devils. We talk about veterans. Let's talk about a young guy. Let's talk about Dawson Mercer. I mean, this guy, he came in and just blew everyone away in the first few months of the season. Kind of slowed down towards the end, but he's a heck of a player. I loved him at the draft. I was hoping the Canucks were somehow going to get him, but that obviously never happened. What does he need to do to avoid the dreaded sophomore slump that seems to always get rookies in their second year in the NHL? What does he have to do?
I think for Dawson, who, by the way, we can add VMA, red carpet correspondent to his resume as well. Kid killed it. I think for him, just be yourself. Like, he has such a good attitude. And before he went home for the summer, he talked about on the Devils official podcast about having the mentality of he didn't want to give the team a reason to say no to him. Like, he wanted to keep showing up, being like, I didn't want to give them the option to turn me away. And that's a great attitude for a kid to have. And I think as long as he can bring that this season, I mean, he's more experienced. And guess what? He was the only player that played all 82 games for the Devils last season. So he at least had that durability that nobody else had. So that's a miracle in itself with the way that last season went. But just be himself. Just keep doing what he's doing. He seems to be very laid back. He was saying, I forget which celebrity, quote unquote, he was interviewing, but he was saying he doesn't have like any superstitions. He just goes out, does his thing. And I think keeping it loose and not really overthinking it is really going to benefit him in year two.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing is when you come into the NHL for rookies is just kind of understanding where they fit, right? I mean, they're usually 19, 20, 21 years old, depending on how long they stay in junior, but they're trying to figure out where they fit either on the team or within that organization. And so to have that mentality is huge. You're absolutely right. Well, let's talk about another young guy who I know you love, Kristy, Jesper Bratt. So gotta ask, is Bratt going to live up to the big contract he received before heading to arbitration? Was that the right move for the Devils, or is he going to hit a bit of a slump as well?
You know what? Unpopular opinion. I actually love this deal. I mean, it would have been nice to lock him in. Of course it would be. But I think a lot of times, like, we all know at contracts, you're getting paid for what you have done, not necessarily what you can do. And, you see people freaking out today with Tage Thompson's contract and everyone saying, how can you give him this massive deal when he only had one really great season? And I'm like, I know people don't want to hear it, but that's how people would have looked at Jesper Bratt if you locked Jesper Bratt. And granted, Bratt has had overall much better numbers than Thompson. But I think it's really great. And I think it would be good for him too, to show that it wasn't just a fluke. And I think I don't think there's going to be a lot of regression in his play because he did really well on a team that really didn't do that great as a whole. So I think that's promising on its own, that you had that great individual performance and you didn't really have the consistent help because we had Nico out of the lineup, we had Jack out of the lineup. So I think that it's a really great deal for him to really prove that this is him now. Like, he's going to be counted on for this amount of points, this amount of goals. And I know Devils fans have seen his off-season training videos. I'm out of breath just watching this kid train for the season. And so I can only imagine what kind of shape he's going to walk into Newark with, like, in a couple weeks. So I'm not really worried about him. I'm excited to see what he can do, if he can go further than that, or if he's going to hit those numbers again. I think it's great.
I think he's going to live up to the contract too.
I think so as well.
I really like him as a player. Again, I believe I added him into trade things for JT Miller. So obviously I'd like him to come over on the West Coast, but that doesn't seem to be happening. This
show's going to turn into all the guys that Matt wants for the Canucks.
Future Canucks.
Yeah.
Well, I love him. So I think he's going to live up to that contract. And I'm glad he got it. Or they had to go through arbitration.
Yeah.
I agree. I think he's worth it. And I think you're both right. I think he's going to live up to it and really kind of find that new role to step into.
All right, Kristy, you mentioned Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier a couple times here already. They're the 1-2 punch. Top line, second line, whatever you want to call them, 1A, 1B. They've progressed quite a bit since they've been drafted. I mean, Hischier was a first overall pick. Jack Hughes was a first overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
Couple, opinions kind of vary depending on who. I know Jack Hughes, everyone's saying, yeah, he should have been first overall. Nico Hischier is a little bit different because there's Elias Pettersson was drafted during that draft. There's a lot of other guys.
Go ahead and say it.
There you go. He should have been first overall. But, he's turned into a really good two-way leader, everything else. So can they eventually be that 1-2 punch that can bring the New Jersey Devils to the Stanley Cup one day?
Yes, they can.
Quick answer.
Yes.
No elaboration.
We all know. Yeah. Next question. We already know what we're getting with Jack Hughes. He's 21 years old. We've seen what he's capable of doing, and if he can keep himself healthy for an entire season, like I don't even know what the ceiling is for this kid. As far as Nico goes, huge Nico Hischier fan. Anyone who reads my stuff, follows me on social media, they know I'm a big Nico Hischier fan. And I remember doing a radio show this season, and someone asked me who I would compare Nico to. And I said Patrice Bergeron, which was very questionable at the time because nobody else has ever made that comparison with him. Andrew Burnett was on the Cam and Strick podcast and said Nico Hischier has Patrice Bergeron potential, which just confirmed that I'm not completely out of my mind. Nico is so underrated, but I think people are starting to realize how good he is. And you have to remember, Nico's 23, and I believe he's starting his 6th season, and Jack is 21. Like, these are young kids that are only going to get better. So I think that, give them a little bit more time. I know nobody wants to hear about the team keep furthering developing, but those two specifically, they're going to develop quickly, and it's going to be very impressive to see what they can do in a year or maybe even 2.
Yeah. I mean, normally players don't fully develop till 24, 25 age season. So, Nico's still got another year or 2. He could develop. Jack's still got 3 or 4 or 5. I mean, this is going to be a dynamic duo heading down, in the future years. But we want to talk about this coming season, Kristy. This is the the season preview. Sorry. So how does this forward group match up with the other teams in the Metro?
This is such a hard question. There's so many factors. I was telling Matthew this before. There's so many factors. Injuries can just wipe out a team.
Yes.
I think maybe as far as the forwards go, they might be. See, it's hard because on one hand, I think when you look at New Jersey, you see the top 2 lines and the bottom 2 lines, and you feel like there's a huge discrepancy between them. But I don't think there's going to be that big of a discrepancy this year because, again, we don't know what Miles Wood can bring back because Miles Wood, the team missed him last year. You can't deny that. So bringing him back, having Erik Haula, having Haula get chemistry with Zator, who kind of had, every line mate imaginable last year. I don't know if the discrepancy is as bad as people think it is. So I think healthy, I think the forward group can hold their own. They have speed on their side. They're such a fast, dynamic team when healthy. So I think they can hold their own because you see in the Metro, there's a changing of the guards happening in the Metro. You see teams like the Rangers and the Devils that are young, that are kind of getting their stride, whereas the Capitals and the Penguins, their reign is coming to an end. So we are seeing that cycle happen. And I think that this is a forward group that can hold their own in the Metro.
I love it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Because the thing is, the Metro division is very tough. It's going to be really tough to come out of that.
It's got to be one of the hardest divisions.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest improvement of any of the divisions that have, the Atlantic probably has a few too. But Metro is going to be a tough division to make the playoffs in. So we'll see how they all match up. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to the defense. The one that's kind of, it's a unit that I know the Devils have been criticized for, and have brought in big names. PK Subban was one of the biggest names before, and then it's Dougie Hamilton this past off, or not this past one, the last off season. let's start with a couple other new additions. And they brought in a couple of guys, not as big, high names. They're not big names, but they've traded for John Marino and they got Brendan Smith as well. It was a little bit of more of a utility defenseman, can play forward too. What are your expectations for both of these guys?
You know, it's so funny because I'm going to be completely honest. I wasn't overly familiar with either one. But what I will say is when we did the media availability for Brendan Smith, I remember signing off and I was psyched. Like he pumped me up so much after he talked about this team and bring like what this team can, like what we can expect from this team. And I was like, if he can do that over a Zoom call, like if he can do that in the locker room, solid. Because every team needs that like rah, like pump up guy. He's a veteran. He's been around. He knows what his role is. And I do think that he is an improvement for that bottom, that third pairing defenseman. And as far as John Marino, I saw the trade. And I was like, John Marino, because you think Pittsburgh, you think Chris Letang. Like, I'm sorry, I'm older. That's who I think of. And when I went on social media, the one thing I saw is that Pittsburgh fans were not happy that they parted with John Marino. And I said, well, there's a positive for New Jersey right there. That they're so sad that they lost him. I know he's a little bit younger. Is he going to be an improvement from Ty Smith? You don't know, because Ty Smith was really good in year one, and he really suffered from the dreaded sophomore slump in year two. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do. I'm excited to see them because I think the one positive is the Devils' defense has been such a negative for so long, probably since Stevens and Niedermeyer and Danico. But for right now, like fans are really excited about the blue line, and I don't think we've seen that in a really long time. So that just speaks volumes to what Fitzgerald's been doing over the past couple seasons to bolster his defense.
That's awesome. I mean, I remember Brendan Smith when he was with the Rangers, and then he was with Detroit for a little bit and kind of never really caught on there. But yeah, he always seemed to be one of those, at least a great locker room type guy. So, all right, moving on to the young defenseman that we alluded to earlier in the show, the number 2 overall pick, Simon Nemec. What do you think his chances are of making the opening night roster?
Opening night, I'm going to say, is slim, just because if Fitzgerald does not make any more moves, we have Hamilton and Graves, Siegenthaler and Severson, and Marino and Smith. And you think that's the 6. And you can't forget, too, we have Kevin Ball, Nikita Okahoy, and Riley Walsh, who all got time with the big club last season. So I think to see him in the opening night roster, I think that would be a little bit of a surprise. With that being said, if the team does have injuries or it's a season where they're out of the playoffs and they just want to give guys time and, see what's going on, I would not be surprised to see him make his NHL debut at some point. I think the opening night is a stretch, though.
Yeah, I think he'd have to probably really blow the doors off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it. Love to see it make it a hard decision for the team. But you're absolutely right, Matt. I think he would need to really be head and shoulders.
I don't think he's far away, though. I think he's probably the closest NHL ready defenseman from that draft. Probably Juracek is there too, but Nemec is definitely in that category. So I'm excited to see him eventually with the Devils. I was completely right that they were going to pick him.
You had to make that point. You're like, I was right. I
was right.
Well,
and yeah.
I think with New Jersey too, it's like you're starting to see kind of like a change because we have him, we have Luke Hughes, we have these 2 like really big, talents coming in. You have Severson and Graves that are going to be UFAs at the end of the season. So it's like when are, the youngsters going to be ready to take those steps? Because the door is going to be open if they're ready. So it's going to be really interesting to see when these guys are going to jump in, because Prudential Center is going to go nuts when Luke Hughes takes the ice for the first time.
Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec as a pairing would be amazing.
It's going to be wild.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. But let's keep talking about the current defense core. How do you think they match in the Metro? I mean, they're, like you mentioned, the pairings. I think they're a pretty strong group. I'm just looking on paper. What do you think they're matching up in this Metro division?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think, again, if they're healthy, I think they can hold their own. I mean, Siegenthaler, pleasant surprise. I don't think anyone expected him to kind of become what he did last season. We have Severson. I know fans like to give him a hard time. he's a solid defenseman. He eats up a lot of minutes. He plays in every situation. He does all the little things right. You have Hamilton, and we didn't see the true Dougie Hamilton last season. So it's going to be interesting to see what his ceiling is going to be and how he's going to be fully healthy. And I think as far as Ryan Graves goes, you hear players talk all the time about how it's an adjustment when you go to a new team, a new a new system. And it kind of, that first year, you kind of you're in it, but it's that second year where it really clicks and you're more comfortable and you're more settled. And I think that's what we're going to see from Ryan Graves. We're going to see him much more settled this season. So I'm expecting even better play from him as well.
I love it. All right. Well, let's move back to the goaltenders now. I want to get your thought. Is the tandem of Vitek Vanecek and MacKenzie Blackwood strong enough to not only compete in the Metro, but also for a playoff position?
Guys, this is the $1 million question. This is the only question that the only question people have is, do we have capable goaltenders? And the answer is, I want to say yes. I really want to say yes. I think, again, we have Blackwood that, said that he's fully healthy, that he has a summer where he can train and doesn't have any nagging injuries, which is a great sign because he did have flashes of brilliance when he first broke into the league. He got votes for the Calder Trophy, whatever season that was. And as far as Vanecek goes, when you look at his numbers have been pretty consistent. Has he gotten a real showing yet? Maybe not. But I think if Vanecek can bring that consistency and Blackwood can kind of refine his game, I think the Devils are in a decent spot. Am I saying that they're going to be Shesterkin? No. Are they going to be Sorokin? No. But I think that we're improving. We're going up from where we were last year. As long as we don't go through 7, as long as Vanecek doesn't retire in the next couple of weeks, I think we're going to be okay. Because it's 2 different options. We have Blackwood, who is going to be ending his contract, who's going to be having to play for a new contract, whether that's in New Jersey or somewhere else. We have Vanecek, who just signed a contract to a team that he's never suited up for, that needs to prove himself that he was worthy of that contract. So it's 2 different ends of the spectrum, but it's a common goal of they need to prove themselves this year.
Yeah, I think this is a huge make it or break it season for both of these goaltenders. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Both those guys, Blackwood, I thought was going to be a heck of a goaltender when he was. Yeah, I thought he was going to be not Brodeur, but a goaltender would be forever with the Devils for a while. So
big guy too.
Yeah, we'll see how that tandem does for sure. But there's another guy that's still in the system. He'll probably be playing in the minors, hopefully playing in the minors most of the year. Nico Dawes. He played a lot last season, and I know you've written articles on him quite a bit. Do you think he plays a role at all this season?
I know. I interviewed him and it was so funny to kind of hear him talk back about just the chaos of the season. Great kid. I never say never. After last season, what we went through, I'm going to say never say never. Do I think he's probably going to play maybe 1 or 2 games, probably with a big club? Probably. I think it's good for his development to kind of have the stability of playing down with the Utica Comets and kind of really developing his game. I don't think there's a reason to rush him or overplay him, which was really the problem last season. Was we didn't have any options, so we really did overwork the kid. So yeah, will we see him probably at one point, but hopefully not. Just based on health alone. Hopefully we do not, but we all love Nico. Nico, good kid.
Good kid, great goalie.
Yeah,
They should make a Nico Dawes t-shirt that says that.
There we go. Coming to an online store near you.
All right. Well, you already kind of mentioned how the tandem compares to some of the other goalies in the Metro, but how do they match up against the other teams when looking at the depth of goaltending across the division?
I mean, listen, we can't sugarcoat it. As far as the Metro's tough. I mean, are they a top 3 tandem in the Metro? No. I would love for them to prove me wrong. And it's not even a dig at their performance. It's just you have Shesterkin. You have Shesterkin right across the river. You have Kemper down in Washington now who just lifted a Stanley Cup. Granted, you could argue, whether he had a real big position in that win, but it's going to be tough for them to prove themselves that they belong in this division. It's going to be a challenge for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
I definitely agree. Yeah. There's so many good goaltenders in that.
Yeah, apparently if you're a good goaltender, apparently you just go to the Rangers because like King retired and the Prince just like took his rightful place in blue paint. So
yeah.
And we literally just talked about this being kind of a make it or break it season for the two of them. So, without them absolutely performing lights out, they're obviously already kind of ranked lower in the division as some of the other goalies just to start, whether or not it's warranted.
But everyone roots for the underdog, right? So yeah, we're just going to go in with the underdog tandem of the Metro, and then we'll just come out swinging.
Love it. Love it.
There you go. All right, let's get to our quick fire segment. This is going to be fun. These won't be just rapid fire names, but we want some explanation. But these are fun questions. We've done quite a few articles on the hockeywriters.com throughout. I mean, I don't know how many the Devils team did, but there's been quite a few. So let's start with a couple breakout stars that you think will break out this season and have a great season.
Jesper Bratt. I feel like I need a Jeopardy like buzzer, but Jesper Bratt.
All right. One player. Oh, go ahead.
Nope. Well, no, I'm going to say why though. Because he is going into his, I believe, third season. And he has historically started off slow, but kind of found his groove as the season went on. And when he did his exit interview, he said about how Sergei Brylin was a really big help for him. And now Brylin is on Lindy Ruff's coaching staff. So I think that connection is very intriguing. It's setting up for Sharon Govich to have a real breakout year.
Love it. Pick one player that needs to bounce back from last season.
Dougie Hamilton. We need a healthy Dougie Hamilton to just prove why he's worthy of the contract, because there was just a lot of setbacks last season. It was out of his control. It was just an unfortunate series of events.
All right, X Factor. Who do you think is going to be an X Factor this season?
You got to go with Palat. I mean, you have to. We have to see what he can bring to this team. We have to see, the voice, what he can do on the ice. It has to be him.
What is one other player that fans should be watching that we have yet to mention on the show?
I briefly mentioned him, Miles Wood, because I think a lot of times last season, people kind of forgot that he existed because he just wasn't around because of the injury. But he brings a lot to this team, and I'm curious to see what he can do if he is, in fact, 100% healthy and ready to go.
All right, let's talk about some rookies, prospects. We talk about Nemec, but is there anyone that could surprise, and this happens quite a bit in the NHL, training camps and all that could surprise and make the roster out of training camp?
I don't know why, but I've been on a Tice Thompson kick basically all summer, so I'm going with Tom. He was injured again last year as well, but he looked really good at development camp. I know it doesn't really mean anything, but for some reason, he's my dark horse going into training camp.
All right. I like it. I love dark horses and training camps. Those are always the fun ones to keep eyes on. All right. Who will lead the team in scoring for forwards?
Jack Hughes.
And who will lead the team in scoring on defense?
Dougie Hamilton. We're going all in.
Love it.
There you go. All right. This is everyone's favorite thing to write about on the Hockey Writers.
Not mine.
Trades. Some people maybe not. There's a lot. So pick one player that you could see be traded before the deadline.
Damon Severson. I think he's the most intriguing player on this roster going into the season.
Love it. Love it. Where will the Devils finish in the standings?
Guys.
And will they make the playoffs?
If everything goes right, they should be in the wild card hunt and be playing meaningful games in April. Do I think they make the playoffs? I really don't even want to answer that question. I don't want to answer. I'll say, you know what? I'll say yes. I'll say yes. I'm going to send some positive vibes. I think they're going to get in with the final wild card spot. And it's going to be really dramatic. It's going to be like the last game of the season that they're going to win.
I love it.
All right.
I love it. And we're going to send everyone back here to the show when that happens.
Yeah. Blackwood will be in net and Jesper Bratt will get the game-winning goal.
Oh, there we go. We're adding more to this. All right, let's do an articles of the day segment. We always do at the Hockey Writers podcast. And Kristy, let's plug some New Jersey Devils writers. What is your article of the day?
Well, you should be checking out all the Devils writers. That's first and foremost. I'm going to choose Devils hire Breland to provide another veteran voice by Erik Johnson. On top of all the moves that Fitzgerald made to make like the roster better, it cannot be understated what he did to this coaching staff, and adding Breland and finally giving him a chance in the NHL is just brilliant. I talked about, Sharon Govich benefiting from him, but I think so many of the young guys, especially the ones that played in the AHL with Breland, I think they're all going to benefit, and it's a great article and you should definitely check it out.
All right. So that was fun.
That was fun.
This season's almost here. I mean, we're still a month and a half away, but it's coming up. We got training camp starting soon. We got rookie camps starting. We got those tournaments that all these teams kind of put on too, prospect tournaments. So there's going to be stuff happening, and potentially trades and other stuff kind of been quiet over the last month. So it's fun to actually start talking about some previews and hockey. So thanks, Kristy, for coming on the show. Our first one. It was great to talk to you and get your insight on stuff. So thank you.
Thank you. I hope it was good.
All right. Well, everyone, make sure you're checking out Kristy's articles as the season gets going. She'll be at training camp. She'll be doing, on the, not on the ice, but around the ice.
One day we're gonna get on the ice with the Heels.
Oh yes, absolutely.
They'll live up to your Twitter name. There you go.
There we go.
Yeah, so make sure you're checking out all the articles from the whole Devils team. They do some great stuff on the hockeywriters.com, and of course check out the website for everything. YouTube, we're going to be having these preview shows throughout the next month and a half. We'll be going through every team and bringing in specialists if we can. May just be me and Kyle kind of going back and forth as well with some of the teams, but we'll see how that all goes. Thanks everyone for watching, listening to the podcast up to this point, and make sure you're checking out all of our coverage at hockeywriters.com, Morning Skate newsletter at morningskate.io. Kristy also is in that as well, so we got everything here. So yeah, make sure you're checking all that out. Follow us on Twitter and all that stuff, and we'll see you next time.